How crazy is it to think that we have made it to 200 episodes? Today's episode is a solo episode to celebrate hitting this milestone and to share about bereaved Mother's Day and Mother's Day. And then to also hear from you listeners. I have received some amazing thoughts on how you all have honored your babies through bereaved Mother's Day and Mother's Day and some of your favorite episodes of the podcast. So we've made it to 200, guys. It's over 200 episodes, over 100 hours of us. For us, by us, Black women and women of color sharing our stories and power with the world. It has been my greatest honor to celebrate with you all and to achieve this milestone. So thank you for listening, for seeing me, for allowing me to tell your stories, and for those of you who listen in week after week. This past Sunday was Bereaved Mother's Day. Did you know that as grieving mothers, we have a special day just for us too? Bereaved Mother's Day was created in 2010 to celebrate mothers who have a child or multiple children in heaven. The first Sunday in May is dedicated to moms like us who hold a child in our heart instead of in our arms. This upcoming Sunday, the second Sunday in May, the world stops to honor and celebrate moms around the world. Well, mainly the US. The UK has a separate Mother's Day in March, but we'll bring them in on this Mother's Day as well. Families typically splurge on greeting cards, flowers, gifts, fun traditions, and lavish meals, as you all know that we like to eat in our community, to show our motherly figures that are in our lives how much they are loved and cared for. This Sunday, coming up on Mother's Day, I want you to consider resting. Yes, that means rest your mind, rest your body, and reflect on all that you have been through to become a mother, because you are a mother. If you have a child in your arms, or if your child is in heaven, it is a day to rest. I can't think of anyone more deserving on Mother's Day than a mother who had to give their child back. Take this day to rest and reflect. And for those of us who want some ideas on how to remember our angels this Mother's Day, here are a few ideas to remember your angel. 1, you can plant a tree in your baby's memory. 2, order a customized remembrance plaque to hang in the house. 3, buy a memorial stone for your home with your baby's name engraved on it. 4, have a moment of silence when you want to remember your angel. Say a prayer to yourself and share a few thoughts with your angel. 5, customize a memorial wind chime from Etsy. 6, create a Pandora charm bracelet with charms that represent the memory of your angel. 7, write a letter to your baby and keep it in your memory box, and do it every Mother's Day. 8, buy a piece of jewelry with your baby's name or your baby's birthstones on it. 9, release flying wish paper with a special message written on it. This is an alternative that's a little bit more eco-friendly than a balloon release, but for those of you who want to release balloons, it is still the same thought. Remember to always just use caution when you're handling fire with this releasing wish paper. And lastly, you can do nothing, because some years when Mother's Day rolls around, you just won't have the energy, and that is perfectly okay. Here is a listener who shares how she has honored her angels during Bereaved Mother's Day as well as Mother's Day.
Hi, my name is Jessica, mother of my son Charlie John, living in Manila, Philippines. I remember during the first year of Mother's Day after my loss, I really struggled desperately from waiting family members, friends, and people around to greet me a happy Mother's Day. It took me a while to validate my own self that I was and I am still a mother, and to embrace motherhood whether or not I receive a greeting on Mother's Day. The fondest day of Mother's Day as an angel mom, it would probably be launching an advocacy for baby loss a year after my miscarriage. I've experienced firsthand how it felt like to grieve silently, and I knew there was a need to acknowledge the unborn children and comfort their parents, and with my advocacy, primarily support for mothers. The event was called Bereaved Believe, a message to every bereaved mother that there is hope, that there could still be joy, that they are worth celebrating as a mother. This isn't the motherhood that we all imagine, but Mother's Day can still be happy as we grieve together, as we heal together, and celebrate each other. To every bereaved mother out there and fathers, happy Mother's Day.
When I started to record this podcast back in early March, I wanted to share updates of all things sisters-in-laws. But then the White House called. So if you do not follow me on social media at sisters-in-laws, on Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, I had the greatest honor of going to the White House to represent sisters-in-laws. I wanted to document a little behind the scenes of what happened for me and my very first podcast guest, Heather Wilson. You can go back and listen to her episode on episode 2 of the podcast and hear her story. But we were able to go to the White House to attend the first ever Black Maternal Health Week roundtable hosted by Vice President Kamala Harris and Ambassador Susan Rice. So I want to share with you a little bit about my White House experience and how I received the opportunity to be chosen to share my story on this platform. Today's sponsor is Ava. Did you start trying for a baby thinking that ovulation was your one and only chance each cycle? It's not. In fact, there are 6 days a cycle when it's possible to conceive, the 5 leading up to ovulation, and the day of ovulation itself. So how can you make use of that fertile window when you don't even know you're in it? That is when AVA comes in. AVA is a sensor bracelet that detects subtle changes in your vital signs that correspond with the opening and closing of the fertile window. All you have to do is wear AVA while you sleep and sync to the app in the morning to see 5 of those fertile days as they're happening. And right now, it is $20 off for the Sisters-in-Laws listeners. Just use the code AVASisters at avawoman.com. Once again, use the code AVASisters or AVASISTERS at avawoman.com. Welcome to episode 200 of the Sisters-in-Laws podcast. I don't know if you can hear me smiling through my voice, but I am so excited that we have made it to this milestone. Today's episode is a solo episode as we celebrate hitting this milestone and really talk about bereaved Mother's Day as well as Mother's Day. I am so excited to share with you ways that you can honor your angel this Mother's Day. And I want to deep dive into a little bit about my White House experience. So if this is something that you are interested in hearing and listening about, stay tuned.
Mother's Day after loss is, of course, very bittersweet for me now. But the first year that we lost our son, I did find out about Bereaved Mother's Day. So I actually celebrated my motherhood with Owen on that date, even though I felt a little bit resentful to have a separate day in which I would now have to celebrate one of my children. It was also really nice for that to be acknowledged because, of course, not everyone would think of him in Mother's Day messages and all that. So that way I had a separate date just for myself and Owen. And on Mother's Day, we did include him by going to the graveside with our daughter and having a picnic. And for all the years following, we'll always have some way to include Owen, even though we can't go to his gravesite now that we're farther away. But he's always in our hearts. So myself, my husband, Naomi, and Jackson will always carry Owen with us.
Hi, sisters. This is Taylor Evans. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I wanted to share my fondest memory of Mother's Day, which would have been last year in 2020, my very first Mother's Day. And it was my fondest because I was showered with gifts and actually recognized as a mom for the first time, really, to be honest, but by everyone in my family, friends. I was showered with text messages and all the annoying things about holidays that can sometimes be annoying, but being able to have that love shown to me was very fun for me. Like I said, all the gifts, and it was just great to be recognized as a mother when a lot of people don't see you as that when you lose a pregnancy.
My fondest memory of Mother's Day was in 2019. It was right after I shared my story publicly during National Infertility Awareness Week about being an angel mom. My rainbow baby decided to make a craft for me, which she always does. And it was a hand-painted jar filled with affirmations. And she presented her gift to me on Mother's Day morning, and she made sure to include the names of her siblings with her gift. And it was just such a delight to her to not only present me with the gift, but to also make sure she told me that the gift was from her and her siblings. And I just thought that was such a heartfelt, the most heartfelt gift I've ever received. It was just beautiful. It was awesome. It was innocent, but it was really what I needed. And I just cried and cried and cried. But ever since then, she continues to make crafts throughout the year, but especially on Mother's Day. And she always includes her siblings. And so I'm just so grateful for that memory and for how she is honoring me as an angel mom and as a rainbow baby mother, but also just walking along this journey of healing and storytelling with me.
Hey, everybody. My name is Cherie Combo, and I'm in Woodbridge, Virginia. And I'm super excited about this 200th episode for the Sisters-in-Laws podcast. And I did want to share just two memories. The most negative memory for me for Mother's Day was I actually experienced my first miscarriage on Mother's Day back in 2016. But to turn that around, my fondest memory of Mother's Day is almost a year later to the T. I learned that I was pregnant again right around Mother's Day in 2017. So those were my two memory moments with Mother's Day. And I'm super proud to be an angel mom to two angel babies.
Today's sponsor is Ava Woman. Did you start trying for a baby thinking that ovulation day was your one and only chance each cycle? It's not. In fact, there are 6 days a cycle when it's possible to conceive, the 5 leading up to ovulation and the day of ovulation itself. So how can you make use of that full fertile window when you don't even know you're in it? This is where Ava comes in. It's a sensor bracelet that detects subtle changes in your vital signs that correspond with the opening and closing of the fertile window. All you have to do is wear Ava while you sleep and sync the app in the morning to see 5 of those fertile days as they're happening. Ava is better than other methods because LH tests can only tell you 1 or 2 fertile days. Taking your temperature only lets you know after you've ovulated, so it's not helpful in real time. And period tracker apps only guesstimate your fertility based on genetic averages. Plus, Ava's technology has been clinically tested and cleared by the FDA. So if you're trying to get pregnant, remember, you've got more than just ovulation day to play with. Let Ava tell you your best 5 days to conceive. And right now, it is $20 off for Sisters-in-Laws listeners. Just use the code AVASISTERS at avawomen.com. That is AVASISTERS, AVASISTERS at avawomen.com. So many people want to know exactly how did you get to the White House? And it went down in the DMs, guys. Another fellow birth worker DM'd me about someone needing someone to talk about loss. And she knew about my podcast. And I was just like, sure, it was supposedly for a local hospital in the Washington, D.C. metro area. So I was like, sure, send them my contact information. The individual was the middle person who was contacted by the White House. So when I actually received the email and a phone call from her, she was just like, no, this is for something at the White House. Can you tell me a little bit about your story? And I would see if this is a perfect fit for it. And then I shared my story with her, told her about the podcast and the community, you all, the listeners who listen to this podcast week after week. And she then forwarded my contact information to a contact at the White House, and specifically the vice president's office. So then that individual contacted me directly and asked me, was just like, sure, I did the same spill, shared her my story, the podcast, you all, and the rest is history. From there, she went on to ask me, did I have any other doulas in the area that also experienced loss like me? And I'm like, yes, absolutely, I do. I have a whole community of doulas that are in the DMV. So I started, I got off the phone with her. I told her, within the hour, I would send her some names and links to their episodes on the podcast. So I wanted to make sure the folks I chosen that they actually already had an episode out there that was published. And then I could actually send her a synopsis of a little bit about their story and them being willing to share. So I called my girls. All of them said, yes, absolutely, Erica, you go ahead and submit my name. And then out of the ladies that I submitted, Heather Wilson and myself were chosen to be a part of this roundtable with 2 other women. So I knew that they were going to be an expert as far as like a doctor or a researcher that was on the panel. And then I knew that they wanted to have a mother or a survivor of a Black woman who died post-childbirth. So I knew that, my story and Heather's story would add a different perspective to it because, Heather has such a powerful story of her and her stillbirth. But with my story, I always share that if I wasn't listened to, I wouldn't be alive. So we both had that commonality amongst our stories, even though they're very similar, but very different, that, thank God that in my case, I was listened to, because even if I wasn't listened to, I probably wouldn't be alive. And that is the real tea on that. So I wanted to, I was still anxious about it. This happened. The call happened on a Tuesday. Wednesday, she confirmed, we did all the background checks. The actual security clearance, all of that happened between Tuesday and I want to say Saturday. So I was still kind of like, everything's still changing. We knew that it was going to be on Tuesday, April the 13th. We didn't know a time, so by Friday afternoon, I went really to make sure that I took care of everything that needed to be taken care of for work-related purposes, took the day off just because I didn't know how long we would be there. I was sure that it would be typically in the middle of the day. And I wanted to make sure that I had something to wear. So girl had to go find something and got it rush shipped from Express. I bought a suit on Express that was like almost like a mint green, and it turned out it worked out perfectly. I can't complain about just the whole get up and what I was wearing and all of that. Just kind of one of those things that all fell together. And we ended up getting cleared for security clearance on Saturday. We had a briefing with the vice president's office, their PR team, communications team, and on Sunday. And then Monday, we were kind of prepped on being able to share our stories. 3 to 4 minutes is what they gave us to share our story. So as you can imagine, trying to share everything in its entirety in 3 or 4 minutes is so difficult. Obviously, my story is so complex, and I didn't want to leave out key points that I wanted to bring up. I mean, obviously, I probably could have talked for 30 minutes knowing me, but I took the time out to just write it out, to have it written down of what I wanted to say, and take up the full 4 minutes of, and actually my talk was actually longer than that. It was actually almost 5 minutes, guys. Yeah, I know. terrible. And I actually had another paragraph to read about just statistics and what I wanted legislation to do, which would have took another 30 to 60 seconds, but I stopped. If you all go back, and I'll make sure I link a video to the Sisters-in-Law's TV YouTube page. I actually have the full video of what happened of my particular speech, of sharing my story on my YouTube, and a link to the full 55-minute roundtable of everyone's presentation, including the questions and follow-up questions that Vice President Kamala asked us, link there as well. It is on the White House YouTube page as well. So I was ready. So Monday night, I was nervous. Me and Heather were texting essentially every day, all day, talking to each other, trying to figure out, making sure we both were on the same page about details and having conversations with, our correspondent. But literally, we talked to them almost every single day up until that Tuesday. So Tuesday morning, I get up, I kind of take my time. I kind of just woosah, can't believe that this is happening. For me, when it comes to things like this, obviously I understand the magnitude of it. I understand the importance of sharing my story and representing this community in such a positive light. But I try to be humble about it, right? I didn't tell anybody, guys. Only people who knew were like my mom, my family, my friends, I did that. But I really didn't share outside of that, just because I didn't know how big of a platform it is. What was supposed to be the week prior, a small roundtable in a private room with just Kamala by herself and maybe her aides, turned into this huge production where it was streamed live on C-SPAN. Like, who would have thought that? And on whitehouse.gov on their YouTube page. I didn't know that it was going to have that far of a reach based on the initial conversations of what this roundtable was supposed to be. But when we agreed, on Sunday, they kind of were prepping us for press and what could happen and all of those things. And then I realized the magnitude of it. So on Tuesday, when I woke up, I was just like, Lord, have your way. And I'm just going to surrender to this process and really just soak in this moment, because it really, for me, it felt like it took a woman being in power, in positions of power, in order for us to feel like we are seen, that we are heard, and that we are making progress within overall reproductive health. So to be able to take that all in was what I wanted to feel and experience as I went throughout the day. So I was not nervous up until I actually started speaking on the mic during that session. And I just knew the magnitude of what I was saying. And I wanted to make sure that it was conveyed in a way that people truly understood, my story and how I was impacted by being a Black woman who was birthing in America, and that we should be able to leave the hospitals with happy babies and healthy mothers. And we should not have to continue to talk about these mortality and morbidity rates amongst Black mothers and infants, that we deserve and should have the right to live healthy lives. And what I love about what Kamala came back and asked me, we did not know that she was going to ask the questions that she asked. I didn't know. I just kind of was going off the top of my dome, which is so crazy to think about the back of it. But I was ready. Obviously I was ready. I was prepared. I didn't even think about it or bat an eyelash. I was ready throughout that process. But let me take you back before the incident happened, before we actually went on stage. So when we arrived at the White House, obviously we only had security clearance for a couple hours on White House premises. So we were there probably 5 or 10 minutes before our clearance started. And we ended up having to just wait outside of the White House gate. Really, it's the administration office gate. And for a few minutes, that's when we met everyone else before we proceeded through the gate, through 2 security check, checkpoints to, make sure that we were good to get our badges, go through like you're going through the airport or any other federal building. You have to go through security and metal detectors and all of the above. No different than that. So once we were on campus, we walked into the administration building. We were actually not in the White House. There, obviously, the White House is particularly only has the space for certain events. And in this case, we were in one of the administration buildings directly next to the White House. And in that building is where the auditorium was. So we went and ended up getting COVID tested, which was something that was required for everyone to be tested prior to entering in any space with the dignitaries per se. So we all were tested and, waited for our results and then proceeded to the auditorium, which you see the venue that was represented. So I did a kind of a recap as I was walking in the auditorium on my Instagram stories, on my Instagram reels. So if you can go look on the reels or the highlights under White House, and you can see me walking into the auditorium and looking and seeing exactly how the auditorium was set up, seeing the big, huge thing that said Black Maternal Health Roundtable and had the White House logo all over the screens. It was breathtaking. I actually had to take a breath and take a moment and just like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like we're about to do this. So we ventured into the green room in the back behind the stage and then just stood in there and just looked at all the pictures, which were pictures surrounding the green room area of the President Biden and Vice President Harris, Kamala. And pictures of them and their families, mainly pictures from them from the inauguration that we've seen, all across social media. And, they had all of these snacks and water and, made sure they had a steamer in the bathroom. So we were just kind of sitting in there comfortable and waiting. And then, given, N95 masks to wear on stage. So I double masked because I didn't like the way the N95 mask looked, obviously, but it was hot, guys. Like those N95s are so hot. We did it for protection, obviously, and wanted to make sure that we were good. So I didn't think that audio would pick up very well through those masks, but it actually really did. It worked out very well. So then you actually saw us come on stage. We were on stage first. And then Vice President Kamala and Ambassador Susan Rice came in on stage. And then once they got on stage, they kind of talked to us a little bit beforehand, gave us some girl talk, told us that we were leaders, that we, our stories need to be told, that we just need to, think about how many people we're representing by sharing our stories. And that we just take our time and walk through each of our stories and the points that we want to make sure that we get across in communicating our stories. And then she really ended it is like, you're sitting here in a room of giants, you're sitting here amongst two of the most powerful Black women in the world. And for me, that normalized it because, yes, whoever would have thought, even last year, if you all go listen back to my recap of going to the State of the Union with my congressman, who would have ever thought that a year later, I would be sitting with the first woman, the first Black, the first Asian American vice president. Like I would have never thought that this opportunity would have came across my desk or slid in my DMs, So I think that this is just to put a foot pause here is that you just never know what seeds that you are planting, all of the work and the things that you are sowing, that the harvest is coming and the harvest may be reaped. And even though this may seem, for me, it was a highlight because it was an honor to be able to share my story, but in any other venue, I don't think I've ever would have had the opportunity to meet the vice president in this manner, right? So to be able to continue to plant these seeds over the last 4 years to get to 200 episodes of people listening week after week, month after month, year after year of this podcast is such a blessing. It's such an honor, and I don't take it for granted at all. So I'm just truly honored to be able to represent each and every one of you listeners in sharing my story on that day. So then we actually had the roundtable, and that kind of brings you up to where we are talking about questions. She's asking questions back and forth. She's really engaging us. She's really directing us and looking us directly in our eyes, both Vice President Kamala and Ambassador Susan Rice. They greet us warmly, very auntie-like. I said that before on another live that I did with Heather on Instagram, on the Sisters-in-Law's Instagram. So you can go and look at that she was very auntie-like, girl, you got this, kill it. Tell them exactly what's been happening. One of those type of things. And I feel like when we see ourselves, we see each other. So to be able to sit in a room amongst and knowing that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, of my ancestors, of the people who have paved a way for me to, a little girl from Chesapeake, Virginia, to go to college and get a degree in chemical engineering and defy the odds that way, go through traumatic losses. I don't even talk on this podcast about the loss of my dad, and I will one day, but to think about losing my dad at 14 and losing my first child, losing my second child, almost losing my life with my third child, to be able to get to a place where I get to see someone who defied the same odds in a position of power to make change. So do not think that the work that you're doing right now is going to be in vain. Everything, all of the trauma, all of the setbacks, all of the disappointments of the things that have been coming your way will set you up for greatness. And there is so much power in sharing your story, guys. I think that is what this comes down to, and how we're celebrating these 200 episodes, being able to get to this pinnacle or this mark or just this point of the podcast and being recognized by the White House and, several other media outlets as a result is just the mark. The work still has to be done. I'm still going to continue to sow seeds. I'm still going to continue to help people get to a place of healing. I'm still going to continue to work one-on-one with clients as they're navigating pregnancy after loss and infertility. I'm still going to train doulas, the next emerging doulas that really want to do this work and go out and make a larger impact in their community. So I hope that you all gain from listening to the podcast, but also just me sharing my story about my experience at the White House is just that this is just one stepping stone, guys. The sky is really, truly the limit, because 2 weeks ago, I did not even know that this would have been possible for me until it happened. So just think about that. I always say, you always hear in church that when God blesses someone, on your row, or just someone that's around you, that the blessing business is in your neighborhood. And I truly believe that everyone who is under the sound of my voice, that the things that you have been working towards, whether that's becoming a mother, whether that's growing your business, whether that is going back to school, that the blessing is in your neighborhood, sis, because you are listening to this podcast, that you've gotten this far in this episode, and that I am just going to speak that over your life and declare it in Jesus' name, that the blessing is on the way. It's in the neighborhood. So what I want you all to do is definitely write me back and let me know, DM me, send me an email, and let me know when that blessing comes, because I just truly feel like if God blesses me, that he's going to bless everyone else who surrounds me, who supports me, who encourages me, who uplifts me, and who pours back into me. So from that roundtable, obviously Kamala had to run, but she was able to share a few words with us after it was done. The press left the room. And she came around and was just like, thank you for being brave. Thank you for being strong. We are going to do something about this. If I am going to make sure that the money gets in the right hands so that this work can continue and we can reduce these rates. And for me, I feel like Kamala has a bigger story to tell. Obviously, she probably is not going to tell her story until she runs for president and is out of office, right? But I feel like there's something else there that she may want to tell at some point someday, but what she's going to do is continue to fight for Black moms and babies. And I'm so very, very grateful that we have that representation in office. But furthermore, that we know she's going to ensure legislation is passed and fight to get things done on our behalf. So I really, truly feel like this Black maternal health crisis is getting some feet under it. We can put fuel to the fire, and actually really go out and seek our local congressmen, our legislators, and our senators, our state senators, and call them and say, I need you all to pass this Momnibus Act. Like, all of these 12 bills need to be passed to continue to save Black moms and babies. So that is a little bit all around about my White House experience. Overall, like I said, it was an honor and definitely a highlight of the work that I'm doing. But I know that the work still continues, and I'm excited about what is to come. And I will share an update later this summer about what's going on with Sisters in Loss, because by that time I would have been working on this new project that I'm working on, and I want to definitely launch it and talk more about it more in detail with you all in a future episode. But to celebrate 200 episodes, we have a listener who shares with us one of her favorite episodes. So here is the listener now.
Hi, my name is Abena Hill, and I would say my all-time favorite episode of the Sister-in-Laws podcast would be episode 81, where Erica and her best friend are discussing the struggles that they both face with their losses, but also how they use that to strengthen their friendships. I think that oftentimes our friends don't always understand what we are going through. They can't always relate to our situation. They're not always able to empathize with us, and they don't always show up. So to see that these ladies were there for each other when they needed it the most was just a beautiful thing. Her friend was saying how she just hopped on a flight, left work, and she just needed to be there and to show up for Erica. So that was just heartwarming for me personally. I just appreciate this platform and all that it has to offer. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, sis, for sharing that episode with us. It is such an honor for me to be able to have my best friends on the podcast to share their stories through their journeys to motherhood, but show how we support each other through our journeys. So I am honored, so very honored, that we have made it to 200, that you've made it all the way to the end of this episode. And I thank you so much for listening to this episode, for show notes for this episode, and to actually download a printout of the 10 ways that you can honor your angel during Mother's Day. Please go to sistersinloss.com/EP200, and you can get that free download for yourself if you weren't able to take notes during this episode. Join our monthly meetup group, our healing collective at sistersinloss.com. I love you all. Thank you for 200, and let's go for 200 more. Until next time, you all have a blessed week. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. There are so many ways to connect with the Sisters in Loss community. Join our monthly support group, our Sisters in Loss Healing Collective at sistersinlosshealing.com. Join our free Facebook group at sistersinloss.com/community, or text sisters to 797979 to download your free Journal to Healing ebook. That is sisters to 797979 to download your free Journal to Healing ebook. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sisters in Loss and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, girl, we on YouTube at Sisters in Loss TV. We love you for listening. Keep the faith. Until next time, this is Erica, and I'll talk to you soon.